the power to live,
the power to create,
the power
to choose. We call that power freedom.
We owe it to ourselves.
We are the women of America. Join us in voting for Andrew Yang as the Democratic nominee for president in 2020. We owe it to ourselves.
Not too shabby, sir. It brings back memories watching stuff like that.
Yeah.
How much sort of hope and optimism and kind of freshness.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, like, I don't know, of course I'm going to vote, and I'm going to vote for Biden, and I'm already donating to him on a weekly basis, but it's a different kind of vote. It's more of a vote of like, oh shit, the house is on fire.
Right.
I don't care, you know what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that fire out. Whereas I think Yang was like, wow, we could have an electric house, you know?
Right. Like one felt like a leap forward, and the other kind of feels like maybe a step. And like, that sounds really damning of Biden. And I know that there's a lot of Yang gang who might have been, maybe just politically undecided or more like there's a whole swath that's interesting because they kind of cover the entire political spectrum. Specifically ones who are like kind of like Biden negative members of the Yang gang. But I will say to those folks, it's worth your time to go look at Biden's policies, because the more I've looked into Biden's actual platform, and I know that we've been spoiled with Yang and like the sheer number of policy links on the web, but in terms of actual detail, I think you'll be impressed what's on Biden's website. There's really good stuff there, and I think that my brother he put it pretty well that it's like they're trying to build like a Voltron of Democratic candidates. It's like, well, we kind of took this from Pete Buttigieg, and we took this from Cory Booker. We took a little bit of Yang here with the fourth industrial revolution, and we took a little bit of the Green New Deal here, and a little bit of this and a little bit of that. And so, no, it's not perfect. No, it's not. It's not like the young, fresh-faced, forward-thinking, Asian American dude that we all wish was the nominee right now. But there's still some things to be legitimately optimistic about, not just like, oh, well, guess I gotta vote for Biden. But there are some days in which it feels like that because it's like, oh, it's the latest gaffe. Well, I'm still gonna vote for him. But I think on a policy level, there are things to embrace that, technically, if you look at Biden's current policy set versus any other Democrat, nominee for president in the past, he is still far more progressive on a policy level than we're used to. Like the Overton window has shifted, and the things that people are running on has shifted in a more positive, progressive direction. And so in the spirit of not letting the perfect be the enemy of the good, I am going to be enthusiastically voting for Biden because I would like at least one or two of those things to become reality as opposed to 4 more years of watching Twitter just explode every time that Trump opens his damn mouth. So
I totally agree. I made a few videos in the last couple weeks comparing Biden policies to Trump proposals on the economy, the COVID response, healthcare, criminal justice, and the environment. And I was really impressed at the depth of proposals on that joebiden.com website. And it's very interesting because the narrative that I've seen on Twitter is that, well, Biden doesn't even have any plans. He just wants to do one thing. And it's like some random thing. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Like either somebody hijacked his website and put all these plans there.
Right. And it's like, honestly, I guess to my mind, it's almost, this might sound strange at first, but it's almost a religious kind of thing to say that he doesn't, because there's this kind of like, Biden's one of those centrist corporate Democrats, and we can't even look at his website or else the ickies will get on you. So people haven't even looked. So when they say that, it's because they haven't looked. Ergo, it's like the child hiding their head under their bed. It's like, if I can't see the monster can't get me. If I don't look at Biden's policies, he must not have any policies. Well, he does. And you owe it to yourself to at least inform yourself, even if you continue to disagree with them, which is totally fine. But at least know what you're talking about. If you want to critique Biden, there's plenty of things to critique him on. But this kind of this intellectual laziness of like not even reading what he actually is standing for right now, it doesn't do his critics any favors. It makes them look silly. And you see a lot of even like really high profile people will get like 100,000 retweets of saying that like, well, Biden's only, winning because he's not Trump. It's like, well, there might be more reasons than that. I mean, like, Biden did win the black vote pretty decisively in this primary. And I think that's something that we should all, remember and respect, because, I mean, frankly, a lot of the attitude that I've seen towards those Biden voters has been pretty disgusting. That, like they're brainwashed or something, or they're too lazy to think otherwise. It's like, well, please remember who you're talking about here.
Yeah, totally.
People, they are voting on principle. They're not voting just to vote. Like they made this decision for a reason. And you should probably, if you want to win elections, know what those reasons are if you want to win next time.
Yeah, if you count, I mean, there were, I think, over 17 or almost 17 million, 16,700,000 or something like that, votes for Biden in the primaries. Even when the primaries were kind of determined, people still went out and participated. And our guy, I think he got like 150,000 votes. And even then, when I was sharing that sort of statistic, some people were so uncomfortable with that. They're like, well, but that's because they didn't have any choices. Like Yang had dropped out. And as much as I love Yang, like he did drop out. Like what?
Right.
He could have stayed in.
Right.
But, so he made a choice, and so did everybody else.
Right.
And blame Biden for that.
And speaking of respect, too, it's like, well, the reason why Yang dropped out is because he looked at his path to the nomination, and being somebody who's trying to make decisions based on evidence, rationally decided that he no longer had a path to the nomination. So if we respect Yang and his brand of politics, we should also respect that he probably made the right call. I mean, there's, everybody can come up with like an alternative, unfalsifiable what if scenario. Mm-hmm. But I mean, those things are fun to think about. And maybe we can learn something from thinking about them, but they aren't necessarily mapping onto what really happened or the more, statistically likely things.
I agree. I mean, let me just share for folks who haven't taken a gander at that. So if you go to joebiden.com and then there's a Joe's Vision section, this reminds me a little bit of the Yang policy section. There's a lot here. Mm-hmm. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And then if you click into any specific, section, then it's like dozens of pages of specifics with facts and goals and themes.
Yeah, I mean, this is serious policy. This is not lazy. We'll make America better.
Right.
We'll do things different. Like, no. Like this actually has like a point by point with hyperlinks and references. And it's like, and I still see Yang Gang saying that like, hey, Yang had references and hyperlinks. It's like, well, yeah, so does Biden. And, I love Yang, but other candidates did too during the primary. He didn't invent having references for policies. He happens to have better policies than most, but it doesn't mean that, nobody else gives a damn about that, because there are some people who do. And I think that, Biden's policy team does seem to care about that. So
I see Matt from Zach and Matt is here. He's not sold on Biden. Hey Matt, welcome back. His argument is like, well, he may have this website with a bunch of bullet points, but he's a hired gun, and we shouldn't assume that he's gonna do everything that he says on that site. That there's like two Bidens. I think that would be the argument. What's your take on that?
That's unfalsifiable. You could say that about anybody. I mean, you saw that people saying that about Yang. And I'm not saying that Biden and Yang are the same person, or I even have as high of an opinion of Biden as I do Yang personally, because I don't. But I would say that it's worth considering the nature of that argument is the same that we saw being leveled against Yang, that people felt that he was a spoiler, that he was ruining Bernie's chances of being the nominee for whatever reason. So they called him a Trojan horse, implying that there are two Yangs, that there is the Yang who presents himself as a progressive, and there's the real Yang who's a libertarian who will have a good faith conversation with Ben Shapiro, the gall, right? And, so, and again, like, I'm not saying that Biden has the same level of sincerity as Yang. Because, yeah, Biden is a career politician, and career politicians are held in contempt for a reason. All that being said, yes, in a sense, it's true. Biden is kind of like the tool, the arm of the Democratic Party. That's true of whoever the nominee of the party happens to be, because it's a party. That's the point of the nomination process, is that you're trying to get whoever the Democratic base wants to support into that role to lead the party. So whether it was Yang or Biden, what you would say is that essentially, yeah, they do represent the interests of the Democratic Party. And there are factions within the Democratic Party. This is something I can speak to from experience working in the political ad space. There are many different factions within the Democratic Party, not just progressives and centrists or whatever. There are lots of different factions. So that's the other thing I want to pick apart here, because when we say that there is, Biden's like the tool of like, of the DNC, it's like the DNC doesn't have a unified will. The DNC is a very chaotic organization with a lot of different opinions within it. And that's part of the reason why there's so many different policies on the website, because as soon as Biden became the nominee, or de facto, technically still in this case, everybody wanted a piece of the pie. So all these different competing forces got to weigh in. And the point of the party is to try to build this coalition in which there will at least be some semblance of consensus. Now, does that mean that some of these things that are on Biden's website, Biden himself may not personally be that passionate about? Yeah. And that is one of the distinctions between Biden and somebody like Yang. If Yang puts on his website, I think we all feel confident that it's something that Yang personally believes in. We don't necessarily feel that same way about Biden. But again, Biden's role here is different than Yang's, because Yang was an underdog. He was trying to make an impact from that underdog position, trying to distinguish himself from the pack. Biden is trying to do the opposite. He's trying to bring the pack together and keep it still a pack, so that way it can hunt and win in November. So there's a charitable interpretation of the Biden is a tool of the Democratic party bosses as well. So just something to bear in mind.
Yeah, I mean, even if he only did 10% of what's on the Biden website, and like, let's just say we have a public option for healthcare, and we at least stop removing environmental protections, and we just like don't have like this big drama every day on Twitter. Like, honestly, I think that a lot of us would feel like that's huge progress.